There we go. All right. Welcome all. I'm Jennifer Eden. I am the Climate and Clean Energy Associate at Utah Clean Energy. And I am going to share some slides with you, and we will get going on this. All right. So in August, Congress passed the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022, and President Biden signed it into law on August 16th. This is the single biggest, most comprehensive climate bill ever passed. And the resources available in it are extensive and not always simple to understand. So we really wanted to sort of pull it apart so that people can understand how aspects of this law might be beneficial to them. Just a brief intro to Utah Clean Energy. We are a climate and clean energy advocacy organization, and we have been around for 20 years, and we are committed to implementing transformative change through clean energy resources. And this law is really an example of not that we're responsible for the law, but some of the things that can come into play with the right kinds of resources. So the Inflation Reduction Act, $385 billion invested in energy and climate programs. Not all of these are at the individual scale, but they are extensive. And the ones that we're going to talk about clean energy incentives for individuals, such as installing solar panels, clean fuel and vehicle tax credits. And then there's also, the clean energy incentives are mostly for homes, and then the clean electricity is for more like solar. But anyhow, we're going to delve deeply into that. And before we get going, I want to share with you, just make sure you understand the difference between tax credits and rebates. Many of you probably do, but just in case. In these laws, there are large categories that go into the tax credit bin, and then there's some others that go into the rebate bin. How tax credits work is that you pay for the installation, you submit information as part of your tax return, and then the amount of the credit, whatever it is for that particular installation, is taken off your tax bill. So it doesn't mean that you have to owe taxes, that, you know, it doesn't have to do with what gets taken out of your paycheck, but whatever the total is that you owe that year, it gets taken off the top. So if you have a very low tax burden, the credit might not be as useful for you, although there is a provision to roll over any excess into future years. But the bottom line is that it can take a while to get your money back. So that's something that, you know, people need to be aware of, that at least April of the next year is when you're looking at getting that back. In terms of rebates, sometimes it comes off at point of sale. And you guys probably have seen something at, you're buying an appliance at Costco and it says $200 rebate. Or you might submit the paperwork and get reimbursement after the fact. And then some installers will deduct the rebate from your cost and apply the rebate at the point of sale, at the installation point of sale, so that you get your money a little bit quicker. But they're just two different ways of distributing money. And just wanted you to make sure that you understood the difference. As we continue here, if we're going to have 3 people present, and then we'd ask that you hold your questions or submit them in the chat. And then we'll have a good amount of time, 25, 30 minutes, to just talk through this and hopefully answer all of your questions. We have 3 people talking tonight. Kevin Emerson is the Director of Building Efficiency and Decarbonization at Utah Clean Energy. And he is going to talk about energy efficient home improvements. That will be followed by Tom Mills, who is in technical solar sales for Creative Energies, and he's going to be talking about residential clean energy applications. And then finally, Thomas Kessinger, who is the Beneficial Electrification Program Manager at Utah Clean Energy, is going to be talking about electric vehicles. We also do have some written information about all of this, and I will provide that for you in the links so that you can take some of this information home with you and are not required to take notes on all of it. And it will be up on our website. So that will be available to you. So first off, Kevin.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Jennifer. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Good. Got a bunch of thumbs up. And I believe that Jennifer, Josh already put a link in the chat to the blog post with the downloadable PDF fact sheets that I think you were referencing. Okay. So
great.
Participants, look there in the chat if you want to follow along. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. I am excited to tell you about 3 provisions in the Inflation Reduction Act that will help cut energy waste, improve energy efficiency, and electrify existing homes across the country, and especially here in Utah. Just a little bit of a preface: energy efficiency is an important part of these couple provisions, and it's I just have to give a shout out and kind of reminder to folks that the cheapest and cleanest form of energy is the energy we don't use through improving our buildings, improving our homes. So that's why we're so excited about the big moves in the Inflation Reduction Act for energy efficiency. And energy efficiency becomes especially critical as we start to electrify. Electrification provides a whole bunch of opportunities, and as our electricity increases over time, because we're using these efficient electric technologies, we also want to make sure that efficiency is a big part of the part of our approach as well at the same time, which is what's happening under these 3 programs. So I'm going to be talking about the Energy Efficient Home Improvement Tax Credit, the Homeowner Managing Energy Savings, or HOMES rebate program, the High Efficiency Electric Home Rebate Program, and then possibly, if there's time, tax credits for energy efficient new homes. I may skip that, and then we can come back to it if there's questions in the interest of time, because I want to make sure we can hear about the other parts as well. So great. So the Inflation Reduction Act modified the value of a tax credit that was used for residential energy efficiency, making it 30%, giving you 30% credit on the cost of an item or an improvement, such as those seen here and also on the next slide. The tax credit was previously called the Non-Business Energy Property Credit. It expired at the end of 2021, but the Inflation Reduction Act brings it back to life and improves it substantially. So if we can go back one slide real quick, the first set of improvements that are eligible, perfect, relate to building envelope improvements. So owners of existing homes can receive a tax credit off the cost of upgrading the efficiency of a home's building envelope. So we're talking about insulation in the walls or in the attic. We're talking about higher performance exterior doors or windows and skylights with the right kind of view factor or solar heat gain coefficient, as well as making homes more airtight. So there are, I'll get into this in a minute, but there are specific cap or specific amounts that are allowed for each of these categories: insulation, and then windows and doors, and air sealing. Generally, they're looks like they're $600 each for the insulation category, for exterior windows and skylights, as well as air sealing, and then a 250 maximum for each door, and up to 500 per home for all doors. Now, all of these All these elements have a bunch of details that we're still waiting for. So the amount of insulation and the level of air sealing and the performance of the doors and windows will need to meet specific energy efficiency requirements. And we can't tell you what those are tonight, unfortunately, because we're waiting for that guidance from the Secretary of Energy and the Secretary of the Treasury, as is the case for a number of different provisions of the Inflation Reduction Act. But that's the first category of the improvements that will be eligible for tax credits under the Inflation Reduction Act for existing homes. So now let's go to the next one. The second set of improvements that are eligible in the bill language are called qualified energy properties, which is just a legalistic way to say heating and cooling systems and water heating and electrical panel upgrades. So these qualified energy property items, like those pictured here, will be eligible for the same 30% credit. The equipment needs to meet or exceed efficiency, the highest efficiency tiers. When it comes to the air source heat pump, for example, the statute references the Consortium for Energy Efficiency tier, which is an industry group that sets standards for energy performance in appliances. So those of you who are familiar with heat pumps, it looks like right now, although this is subject to change, that the heat pump kind of performance requirements are going to be a SEER 18 and an HSPF of 9.5. So the SEER is the air conditioning aspect, the efficient air conditioning aspect of the heat pump, and then the HSPF is how efficient the heat pump side of the technology is. So SEER 18 and HSPF of 9.5. So the credit is equal to, again, 30% of the cost of the equipment. In general, the installation costs are not included in the tax credit. And there's traditionally per home, or for the building envelope improvements, there's a maximum cap of $1,200 per home for the credit. However, when it comes to the some of the like the heating and cooling equipment, heat pump water heaters, heat pumps and biomass stoves, etc., they actually have a credit that exceeds that $1,200 cap. So they will be eligible for up to $2,000 maximum credit. Yeah, let's and then just the last item is that any improvement that's made to the electrical infrastructure to accommodate a heat pump or heat pump water heater, that's also allowed within the cost for the tax credits. So if you can go back one real quick. Yeah, so just in summary, the energy efficient home improvement tax credit provides a 30% tax credit. It's extended until 2032, and that it takes effect beginning of 2023. This summary slide just kind of repeats what I shared. $1,200 per year tax credit for the kind of the first category of the kind of the building envelope, $2,000 for the other systems. I didn't see anything in the Infrastructure Act, or sorry, Inflation Reduction Act, that talks about the carryover, but this previous version of the tax credit, if you didn't have a tax liability, does carry over for future years. So I'm assuming that's going to be the case this time around as well. But that's just an assumption at this point. Okay, so the next one thing I want to talk about is the Homes Rebate Program, or the Homeowners Managing Energy Savings Rebate Program. So as Jennifer mentioned, this enters the territory of post-purchase rebates, as opposed to tax credits that are applied for when you file your taxes. This program, as well as the next rebate program I'm going to be talking about, is funded through a $4.3 billion appropriation to states. This one in particular is for comprehensive home energy retrofits, and that's including building envelope improvements, like we talked about before, insulation, air sealing, and also improvements to the home in the form of highly efficient electric or even gas-fueled appliances. And it's available for single family and multifamily. This rebate program and the next one I'm going to be talking about are especially important because, unlike the tax credit that I mentioned before, this program and the two rebate programs are designed to support low and moderate income Americans and provide resources to help low and moderate income Americans make improvements to their home and receive rebates to cover the cost. So unlike the tax credits, state energy offices are required to apply for these funds, and these rebate programs will be administered probably at the state level is what we expect. Let's see. There are two methods. So when ultimately when a program gets established, you'll work with an energy professional, and they'll do an energy assessment of your home to tell how efficient your home is. You'll make improvements, and then they'll model how efficient your home is now after the improvements, and then you'll get a credit or the rebate based on how much energy you save. And then there's another methodology to do that too, which is just looking at how much energy your home used in real time before, like through looking at your bills, before the improvements were made and then after the improvements were made. That's another method that will be used. But a lot of these details we're still waiting for from the Secretary of Treasury and the Secretary of Energy to provide guidance. So I wanted to provide a little bit of more specific information about the amount of the rebates that are available through the HOMES program. So again, this is a program that focuses on providing rebates for a whole home energy improvement. So, and there's two tiers. One tier is homeowners will be eligible for 50% of the cost of the energy improvements or retrofits, up to a cap, if the home achieves a 20% or greater level of energy efficiency. However, for homeowners that apply that are under the 80% area median income, they are able to receive double that rebate amount. And I've seen a couple places, this isn't specified in the statute, but I've seen in a couple of resources that that might cover 80% of the cost of the project up to $4,000 for 20% savings. And then if you achieve an energy savings across the whole home of 35% or more, then for just a moderate income family, the rebate is going to be $4,000. And for a family that meets the 80% area median income, then that is up to 80% of the cost, up to $8,000. And it's whichever is less. So it's important to note that a household is not able to claim a rebate for this HOMES program, the Homeowner Managing Energy Savings Program, as well as the next rebate program I will talk about. But there is an opportunity, I believe, I haven't seen it explicitly. I believe this particular program doesn't exclude exclude folks who meet that, who are above that area median income level. So you could take the tax credit potentially, as well as get a rebate for this particular program. So you could do both of those, but you can't get a rebate from this program and the next rebate program that I'm going to be talking about. So let's talk about that next one. The next one is called the High Efficiency Electric Home Rebate Program. It's similar in some ways in what we just looked at. It's funded out of the same pot of money. $4.3 billion in the Inflation Reduction Act is supporting the program I just talked about and this new program. And as with the HOMES rebate program, the state energy offices are required to apply for these funds and then administer at the state level. The one thing that makes this different is some of the income eligibility, as well as the focus of electrification through this program, as the name implies. This is really designed to help homes go all electric. So the electric technologies that are included in this rebate program are shown here. Air source heat pumps for space heating, heat pump water heaters, heat pump clothes dryers, electric cooking equipment, as well as any electric panel upgrades and wiring upgrades that will be needed to make a home suitable to use these kinds of electric appliances, efficient electric appliances. And if we go to the next one, and similar to the HOMES program, this also supports this rebate includes within its scope building envelope improvements to improve the efficiency of homes. So similar types of measures. We're talking about insulation in the ceilings and walls and other areas, and also air sealing to make the homes more airtight. So Let's go to the next one. This rebate program will provide up to $14,000 in rebates for efficiency and electrification. So we can see these listed here. And we'll talk about this on the next slide, but it's important to note that the largest incentives, the largest rebate will apply to families that meet the lower income requirements. So it's really trying to help bring these technologies to communities who may not otherwise have access to them because of the upfront costs. So we see, you can see these listed here. There's, between $840 for electric stoves or heat pump clothes dryers, up to $8,000 in rebates for a heat pump for space heating and cooling. So let's go to the next one, and I'll explain how this one is structured. So there are really two tiers for those who are eligible to receive rebates from the high efficiency electric home rebate program. And as you can see here, as I mentioned, the largest incentives are for families that have a household income that is below 80% of the area median income. So I wanted to provide a little context. In Salt Lake County, according to HUD, for the year 2022, the area median income for a family of 4 is right around $102,000. So in this example, in Salt Lake County, if a family of 4 earns below $82,000, they would be eligible for rebates that offset the full cost of these upgrades. So, and that would be up to a $14,000 cap. And families with household income between $82,000 roughly and about $154,000 per year would be eligible for a rebate that covers half of the cost of the rebate. And as you can see here, a family of 4 that in this example that earns above $154,000, they wouldn't be eligible for this particular rebate program because it's limited to 80% and below, and then between 80 and 150% of the area median income. And want to take a step back and let everyone know that Utah has, the state of Utah, believe it or not, has great experience in the past implementing these kinds of rebate programs. Back in 2010 to 2012, Utah ran the Utah Home Performance Program. It was one of the most successful home performance programs in the country. It had a big impact. In the 2 years that it ran, nearly 1,300 homes were upgraded with deep energy efficiency retrofit, and the average energy savings was 25%. It saves, $460,000 or so for all those homes per year, making living in their homes more affordable from an energy perspective. And it also supported a lot of local jobs, 30,000 work hours. So the takeaway here is that these two rebate programs are the kinds of things that we think Utah can do because we've done it before with a very successful home performance program. And so we think Utah's well positioned. The next step for these two rebate programs is that we will be working with stakeholders to talk with the state energy program, which is part of the Office of Energy Development, because it's really that entity that needs to submit an application to U.S. Department of Energy to put these programs into place and offer these rebates to families here in Utah. And there's going to be a lot of people who are involved in making these programs successful, from coordinating with the utilities and their incentive programs, as well as local contractors. So we think there's an exciting opportunity for this to take place here in the state of Utah. And I look forward to answering questions when we get there. And I will pass it back to Jennifer.
Okay, great. We will move on to Tom Mills from Creative Energies. Tom, do you want to tell us about solar installations?
You are on mute.
It looks like you're muted.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Jen. Yeah, I think a good place to start is just a little bit of background so folks can understand where we are now and where we're headed with this tax incentive. As you know, or may know, the tax incentive was stepping down. It was at 30% for a while. It did step down to 26%, and it was scheduled to step down to 22% next year. The good news about this tax incentive is it's adding a lot of long-term stability for homeowners now. So if you look at this slide, you can see under the new act, what's great about this is anybody who invested in solar in 2022, when you made that decision, you were under the assumption that you had a 26% tax credit. So now that's retroactive for 2022. That investment you made in solar, you'll get 30%. And moving forward from 2023 up until 2032, you can see that it's going to stay at 30%. This is going to make the process a little easier for homeowners so they don't feel pressured at the end of a year to try and hurry up and find an installer, get their solar installed and take advantage of an existing tax credit before it steps down. So now you've got some nice stability built into your decision-making process and when that timing is good for you. One of the other interesting things that came about this is battery storage was traditionally had to be tied to solar, and the battery had to be charged from the solar in order to qualify for the existing tax credit. That's going to change for 2023. Your battery can also be purchased as a standalone. So if somebody was looking at trying to add battery storage to their home and not investing in solar, now battery will qualify for that 30%. And it's also going to allow the homeowner a bit more flexibility now with how they charge their battery. Because before you had to have it just being charged from the solar, and now you'll be able to have it be charged from solar or grid, depending on maybe weather conditions that are happening for that given day and how you're using your battery. So that's good news for the homeowner. As you can see, it doesn't just apply to solar. It applies to solar water heating, fuel cells, small wind energy, and geothermal heat pumps. These areas of renewable energy are outside of my scope of expertise, but it's nice that they're being included. So whatever is most conducive or available for where you live, you can take advantage of these alternative energy resources. It's pretty straightforward. We're grateful to see some stabilization here, at least for the next 10 years. And I think it's going to be very advantageous for homeowners to start investing in solar plus battery storage.
Great, thank you, Tom.
You're welcome.
And now we'll go on to Thomas Kessinger, and talking about EV cars.
Good evening, everyone. It's nice when the federal government makes it easy like that on the solar tax credit. My name is Thomas Kessinger. I'm the Beneficial Electrification Program Manager here at Utah Clean Energy. So in my role, I help people electrify their buildings and I help people electrify their modes of transportation. So what has stayed the same about the EV tax credit is the $7,500 amount that we all know and love. But the federal government has made three, I would say, significant changes to the tax credit to incentivize manufacturers of these vehicles to bring those jobs and those supply chains into the United States or North America. So I'm just going to walk through some of these points. And if you have any extra questions, we can address those here at the end. So the first new metric that every car that must meet to qualify for this tax credit is that the vehicle must be manufactured or assembled in North America. The federal government has prepared a list of vehicles that might possibly be assembled in North America. I say it's a possibility because these are global corporations manufacturing cars in different countries. So you actually have to go down to the VIN number itself and identify where that vehicle was manufactured. And I can post that link into the chat here in just a second. And that requirement is in effect today. In order to qualify for any tax credit today, you would need to have that vehicle be manufactured and assembled in North America. The second requirement that is new is that a percentage of battery components must be made or assembled in North America. It starts at 40% and scales up to 80% by 2026. The third new requirement is very similar to the second, and it's a percentage of the critical minerals must be sourced from countries with which the United States has a free trade agreement. And this similarly scales up from 40% to 80% by 2026. The last two are new, however, they are not as onerous and they're simpler to understand. Only vehicles under $55,000, if it's a sedan, or SUVs or trucks, they must be less than $80,000 to qualify for this credit. And what, again, was not in existence previously was these income caps. So $150,000 for an individual, $225,000 for a head of household, or $300,000 for a joint filer. So those are the biggest changes. And I guess the one thing I didn't write down here that is a change, which is beneficial, is previously a manufacturer could only sell 200,000 vehicles to qualify for that tax credit, but the 200,000 car cap has been removed. So as we start to onshore more of our manufacturing and assembling and supply chains, we could see these tax credits go for more than just 200,000 vehicles. Thank you, Jennifer. And as an added bonus, the federal government also announced a new used EV tax credit. This credit is worth up to $4,000 or 30% of the purchase price. The credit can only be used once per vehicle. However, you as an individual can use this tax credit, I believe, once every 3 years. There's a $25,000 cap on the price of the vehicle. And similarly, there are income caps for $75,000, $125,000, or $150,000, whether you're an individual, head of household, or joint filers. So I took a look at the used EV market that exists on KSL a few nights ago, and it looks like there's a lot of vehicles that would qualify for this tax credit, at least vehicles that are under $25,000. So I hope to see it encourage and entice more people to consider adopting an EV, perhaps even as their second car. If you're trying to expand your 2-car household and you want to see what it's like to drive an electric vehicle. So that is all I have for the EV tax credits.
Thank you, Thomas. And to note, for the used EVs, they don't have to have domestic content.
That is correct. Thank you.
So, okay, I would like to open it up to questions. I'm going to stop my screen sharing, and Josh was going to let us know who had what questions.
Well, I'm just going to let folks ask questions. And if you don't mind, panel, I'm going to start with the EV questions first, and we'll go from there. I promise we'll get. So Haley, I think you had a helpful question for everybody, and I'll let you ask it.
Sure. Yeah, I was just sorry. I have my phone recording also. I was curious. So I bought a used EV in July of 2022, and I was wondering if that would qualify for the credit. But it sounds like it only applies to vehicles purchased in 2023, which is too bad, but still great to have an EV.
I will say thank you very much for adopting an EV and helping us clean up our air, Haley. Unfortunately, because this tax credit doesn't take effect until January 1, 2023, we don't expect it to be available for purchases made in 2022.
Great. Thank you, Haley. Sorry.
Thank you.
Angela Shelby, you had a question about EV and the income tax caps that Thomas mentioned.
Yeah, I didn't see income caps mentioned in the earlier rebates and incentives discussions. And so I just wondered if those income caps only relate to the EV vehicles or the entire Inflation Reduction Act.
The figures I cited during my portion of the presentation are only applicable to the EV tax credit. And the rebate programs that Kevin discussed are income qualified based upon whether you're 80% or between 80 and 150% of AMI. But then the tax credit that Kevin mentioned at the top of his presentation is not income qualified.
Got it. Thank you.
And Tom, you had a question about EVs and the used EV tax credit. Tom Mills.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. So it sounded like that it was a one-time opportunity for a used EV. If it got sold again, that next buyer would not qualify. Am I understanding that right?
My understanding is that this tax credit can only be claimed once per vehicle, but an individual can use the tax credit every 3 years or so by purchasing another used vehicle.
Okay.
And also to note that you have to buy the used vehicle from a dealer. Isn't that right, Thomas?
I think in 2023 that the dealer requirement hasn't taken effect. I'd have to go back to the cheat sheet that I made, but in 2024, there's a dealer requirement.
Okay.
And then John Webster, you had a couple of questions, but you had one about EV battery upgrades.
Yeah, just if there's going to be a program to allow you to update your battery on an older EV.
I was also looking into this for myself. I drive a 2014 Nissan Leaf. It's a fantastic car, but it was manufactured with a 24 kilowatt battery, and now they can make those 40 kilowatt hour packs. And there's nothing in the federal government programs and there's nothing in the state programs that are explicitly talking about a battery replacement program. I've heard some conversations from Nissan that they are considering battery replacement programs and that there are third-party providers. However, I was unable to locate any third-party battery replacement provider in Utah. My next step was to contact a Nissan dealer and talk through what that process might look like.
Yeah, or get that Prius doctor that's on 2100 South, get them to start working on Nissans.
Yeah, I'm only, 4 streets down from that shop. And so I was going to wander in one day and just kind of get a sense of what they do.
Yeah, thank you.
One other thing, Thomas, just to say that my understanding is that, importantly, we don't want to delay everybody in buying their new EVs, but my understanding is that starting in 2024, that tax credit can be transferred to the dealer, so people could experience it as a sort of an upfront discount. Is that correct?
Again, that is my understanding. There's a lot in these statutes, and there's a lot we have yet to hear from the Secretary of the Treasury, who will be providing more guidance on these tax credits.
Okay.
I think the intent is, Josh, like to make it more like a cash on the hood type rebate. Exactly.
And I'm going to go back to John and then Deb to talk a little bit about the efficiency and home improvement section that Kevin went through. John, you asked a question about landlords and residential rentals.
Yeah, I have a duplex that I rent out, and only like a year ago learned that I could, as a landlord, install solar and get a tax credit. So, and thank you, Creative Energies. You're a great provider for my primary home. So yeah, I just don't think there's any information out there targeting landlords. And I have tenants that would definitely qualify if they wanted to install the solar themselves. They would definitely qualify for the lower income area, but it seems like a bit of a burden to put on somebody that's renting your property. So
Josh, I can take that.
Yeah. Sure.
So there are provisions for multifamily homes, and it gets a little bit more complicated. So once you get into the non-residential realm, they talk about, again, domestic content in the solar panels. And they talk about, it just gets more complicated, like the electric vehicles are complicated. But there are provisions there. And you just have to get into the weeds, and we're happy to talk to you about it. But it's detailed enough that I wouldn't pretend to be able to go into it right here, but there's definitely opportunities for landlords.
And I would just add that on the rebate programs for electrification and efficiency improvements, the eligible entities are homeowners, multifamily building owners, or aggregators. So there are opportunities for these entities that work on behalf of a multifamily owner, or possibly multiple single family owners, for them to be eligible to take those rebates, to make sure that these rebates can serve the rental market as well. But renters themselves wouldn't be eligible, I don't believe, to apply. So we're looking at the homeowners, or the multifamily building owners, or these aggregator entities, which are really, it could be a not-for-profit organization that works with contractors, or contractors themselves.
All right, and any of these improvements have to happen in 2023? They can't happen between now and the end of the year?
They will become effective starting in 2023. So
Okay.
I don't
Hold off.
want anyone to not do a project if it's ready to go. But if you did wait for 2023, it definitely will take a little while for these programs to become established. If we're talking about the state submitting an application to Department of Energy, the state entity also has to have implementation contractors identified through an RFP, and then to select them, and then there's probably contractor training, which are all of those kinds of things happened 10 years ago when the state ran its home performance program. So it's going to take a little while. So if they're live in 2023 in Utah, I would be thrilled. So it may be something to think about planning for the end of 2023 or 2024.
But
Yeah.
the commercial solar installation might be a little bit different. And Tom might have some insight on that. Again, it does get complicated.
Well, also, I would just say on the tax credits, those are in effect 2023 for the 2023 tax year.
I just want to interject here and say that we're circling around what I thought was a great question asked by Lisa, which is what support and infrastructure will be needed to make sure people are aware of these programs and to take advantage of them. So Kevin, can you again just talk through, what is the lead state agency that's doing this, and what types of things are they going to do, and what types of things could we do as people to encourage them to take advantage of these programs?
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out, and thank you, I think it was Lisa, for asking the question. So my hope is that, so it's these all states, so I'm going to actually answer, I think it was Deborah's question and Lisa's question at the same time. So states will receive formula funding, or be eligible to apply for formula funding from the Department of Energy. States won't just automatically get the funding. States have to apply, but there will be funding available for states on a formula basis based on population, is probably how that will work. But so once a state applies for the funding, the state will have to develop a program structure, and there's a lot to that. The way I would hope this works is that there is a simple one-stop shop website administered with these funds by the state and the contractors that actually implement the program on the state's behalf, that allows you to go in and apply for high efficiency electric home rebate or the homes rebate program. And there would be a few steps to that. One of the first steps would be, is my home eligible? Income check, things like that. The next step would be, get connected with a home energy auditor to do, if it's the homes program, the homes rebate program, to do your kind of pre-upgrade assessment. And then after the upgrade was done, do the post-upgrade assessment. The point is that there's a workforce that needs to be trained on what the requirements are, because there's a whole bunch of requirements about how to validate and verify that the efficiency improvements were made, and that the building envelope meets the required specifications and such, and document that the right kind of efficiency criteria of the heat pump or the heat pump water heater was met. So, you know, through that kind of structure, the home energy assessors and then the contractors doing this work would become part of the kind of the marketing and the promotion of this program and the community engagement about this program, as was the case in the past. There would have to be a lot of community outreach and marketing dollars. The good news is my understanding is in the Inflation Reduction Act, there's $200 million available to states to support states with implementing the programs. So there's a special carve out to help cover those kinds of costs. Obviously, the utility programs, our utilities have, you know, fairly comprehensive incentive programs. They would be part of the puzzle as well, and utilities would need to be part of the, part of the promotion as well. Any other thoughts that you want to add to that, Thomas? Or
yeah, I think I just want to echo the workforce side of things that Kevin is discussing. We need people to do this work, to actually go out and to do the efficiency work, to do the panel upgrades, to install the heat pumps. So, you know, I would encourage people to consider those as trades if they're at a point in their life where they're trying to think about what they want to do as a career. I think that they will have at least a 10-year window where they will be busy doing this work, thanks to the federal government. And related is if you know individuals who are interested in working at the state of Utah, the Office of Energy Development itself has a few key positions that are open that you know, we have no say in who gets those roles, but I would encourage you all to share with your contacts that the Office of Energy Development is hiring, and you get to work on cool programs like this. And then, excuse me, lastly, what we're doing at Utah Clean Energy in partnership with the EPA is what we're calling the Equitable Electrification Collaborative. And so what we're planning on doing is meeting with these 4 convener communities that we're working with, which are located on the west side of Salt Lake, and going into their homes and coming up with an electrification plan, which includes some of these efficiency improvements, so that people can start to get in the frame of mind that over the course of this next 10 years, here's 6 or 7 steps that I can take without feeling like they need to do it all at once. So in terms of that outreach, we're trying to directly go into some people's homes and explain that this process is attainable, or these rebates are attainable for them. So it's really kind of an all hands on deck. But I think it really starts being an ambassador in your own community.
Yeah, and we don't know exactly what the timeline looks like yet, but we will definitely be advocating, and we encourage other organizations and individuals to advocate that the state makes sure and submits a well thought out application, and doesn't pass up on this opportunity to use these resources to, you know, set up a program that creates jobs and helps us all reduce our carbon footprints and electrify our homes. We've, like I mentioned, we did it before 10 years ago, and so I think we can absolutely do it again. And I see there's another question about something more electric vehicle related. Thomas, I don't know even if you have an answer to that. I can provide an update if needed as well.
I'm not sure which question you're referring to.
The
VW settlement.
Daniel.
There, as far as, yes, Kevin might have a better understanding. There are funds available for workplace charging incentives still available at the state of Utah. There's a different chunk of the VW settlement money that has already been allocated. I don't know to which project, it's not coming to mind, but there still is, I think, around $2 million of workplace charging incentives that are funded through the VW settlement. And you apply for those through the Department of Environmental Quality.
Yeah, the VW and the VW settlement funds were put into a bunch of different buckets. Yeah, the state does have some funding still left. Part of that may be from the VW settlement. Some of that also came directly from an appropriation from the state of Utah for workplace charging. That 2 million or so that Thomas mentioned.
I just want to note couple things, make sure it's clear, everyone, because it's confusing in the fact sheets that I included in the chat and is available to help to clarify these things a little bit. But in the home sector, the solar rebate for rooftop solar and for storage is available now. Then the energy efficiency tax credits are available starting on January 1st. It's the rebate programs that Kevin's been talking about that will require some administration at the state level. Those will be, but the tax credits are not dependent upon the state taking any action. Similar thing. The EV tax credit is available now, but there's some changes that takes place and particularly to battery content starting next year, and will continue, just to let everyone know. But and I will say that Daniel asked about supply chain issues, and I would encourage everyone, there will be some supply chain issues, there will be some labor issues, we're aware of that, but the demand within the law and the certainty of about 10 years here, I think will help to over time to help get us through and shift some of the market. And so it's not a magic wand, it's not everything, it will take time, both for battery content, solar cells, but I do think that there's some reasons to be hopeful with 10 years of certainty that we're going to be in a different environment, a different game. But I want to, Ian has a question, and I want to let him ask that about outreach to retailers. Or I can ask it, Ian, if you prefer. Ian asked if there'll be outreach to retailers of appliances to encourage them to recommend electric over gas. That's a tricky one, but I thought Kevin and Thomas could shed some light.
In the ideal world, we'll have two robust programs, the homes rebate program and the high efficiency electric home rebate program. And there will be all the different market actors, if you will, engaged in promoting those. So if you go to the big box retail stores, they'll have a QR code on every appliance you walk around and see when you're, looking for a new appliance, and like shoppers and consumers will see, oh, there's a rebate on this, I should learn about it. And hopefully they'll be promoting those. That kind of detail is not specified in the statute at all. That will come down to what the state proposes in its application, and then how the state works with the contractors, which are typically going to be, independent, for-profit, possibly not-for-profit firms that implement these kinds of programs, where they do the, education and training of the workforce. They build the marketing plan. They build the websites that help people see, log on, see if they're eligible, and apply for the rebates. So all of those details will come later on. I think it's a really important element, is for all the different players to promote, electric technologies as much as possible. To be fair, the homes rebate program provides incentives for the most efficient, a variety of the most efficient appliances, including, high efficiency furnaces and boilers and things like that. So there will be, programs that will be, allowing those kinds of appliances to be incentivized through these rebates as well.
Yeah, and I'll echo a bit of what Kevin is saying, in that the really impactful thing that this legislation has done is make it so that the electric option is the cheaper option. So the high efficiency home electrification rebate program can only be used on electric appliances. You cannot use those on a gas appliance. And as Kevin mentioned, under the homes program, it has to be the highest and best technology, which increasingly, or maybe not the best, but they're higher standards. And as the federal government increases those standards, for example, what meets an Energy Star certification can change over time so that the only choice is an electric option.
And just add that to be clear and kind of to respond to Alex, your question. In the high efficiency electric home rebate program, there will be no option for the appliances other than the most efficient electric version. So we don't have to do anything to advocate that those are the appliances that are targeted in that particular program, because that's how it's structured. We just need to make sure that the state the state of Utah applies for those funds and puts together a great plan. However, for the other option, I expect that the state will develop an application that is inclusive of all technologies, because that's what the federal statute allows and probably requires. So
we're running out of time, so I just want to hop in here on Alex's last question. How do we best advocate to the state to provide the framework for these rebate programs? I think it's a lot of being an ambassador in your own community, being loud that these programs exist, connecting these programs to other issues that we're facing, whether it's climate change, air quality, housing affordability. I think what comes top of mind is, community-based organizations, city councils, writing a resolution or a letter to these state agencies telling them that people in our community want this. We want this. We want to see these dollars here, and just letting your voice be heard. But that's just my opinion.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Feel free to reach out to us if you have more questions. I put the link to the fact sheets at the end of the chat there again. There's a lot of exciting movement. So yeah, take advantage.